What's up, Bills Mafia? Fernando Schmude with another Leading the Charge. Today I'm going to do my draft recap and then talk a little bit about linebackers and the linebacker position, since it's pretty obvious that Dorian Williams' pick was the most confusing one for some people, or the most questionable one. So today we're going to discuss this linebacker position and some of the plans that Sean McDermott might have for this unit going forward, or especially for the linebacker position. And feel free to add your comments and to discuss in the chat. It's going to be a pleasure to check your opinions and discuss with you. So without further ado, let me start talking about this draft. I really like this one. Okay, it wasn't what I was expecting, as you could see in my mock draft, but it was different in a good way. Okay, I really like the picks, especially in the first two rounds. I think the value was there, and Brandon Beane could draft the best players available in their positions there, and then with the trades to move down and add some more picks later on, they still could add some value and some interesting prospects. And let me start talking, starting from the last pick, right? Alex Austin, cornerback out of Oregon State. I think Austin offers some value there, some potential there, because if you look past in the former Brandon Beane's drafts, and they added in the 7th round guys that really worked out and played, like Dan Jackson, for example. But Dan Jackson, as a prospect, he didn't have the athletic ability to really become more than he already is. In fact, he's been even better than expected as a guy who's supposed to be too small, not athletic enough to play the cornerback position. And the guy has been able to hold down that starter spot for a couple of seasons now. And even in the absence of Tre'Davious White, he could do his job and play decent football. It looks like he's always there, ready to make a play, and it didn't happen. Maybe that's the price he pays for not being big enough, fast enough. But he's really a football player, and he's being able to play better than most 7th round picks can do. So I liked Alex Austin pick because, differently from Dane Jackson, that's a guy who has some athletic ability, has good size, he has the potential to be developed and maybe become a solid contributor down the road. All right, he plays with some swag, with some confidence. That's good to see from an outside cornerback, and I believe that's a guy who can be developed and can find a role, if not on this Bills roster, maybe in another franchise. But the potential is there for sure. Then Nick Broker, the offensive guard out of Mississippi. Here we're talking about a guy who reminds me Ryan Bates when he came in, all right, because that's a guy who doesn't have the strength you want from an offensive lineman, or a starter at least. But Broker has experience playing at tackle position, has experience playing as a guard last season in Mississippi. He was moving inside because of his shorter arms, but that's a dependable guy. That's a guy who never missed games injured in his college career, and he started a lot for Mississippi, contributed every year. So that's a guy who I see Cromer moving around, developing as a potential solid backup down the road, right? All of those guys obviously can surprise and become starters, become stars in this league, but realistically, I think Broker is a guy who can become a really good backup offensive lineman, offering a lot of versatility, playing inside and out if needed. And maybe his peak is what we have seen from Ryan Bates, a guy who was expected to be this guy for us, but he's starter lately, and in the last couple of years has done a good job and he's being able to hold down that starter spot. So I believe Broker can offer this kind of value, and that's always good when you're drafting in the 7th round. Then in the 5th round, Justin Shorter, that's a guy who I believe a lot of people are excited about, and when the training camp starts, I'm pretty sure he's gonna make those crazy catches with his size, with his length, and especially without the pads on. That's a guy who will be able to take advantage of smaller cornerbacks and make a lot of great catches in training camp, OTAs, and fans will be crazy about him, crazy about watching more out of him. But I think his playing time is at least a year away of happening, or he's at least 1 year away of really contributing on this offense. I think there are a lot of weapons already in place, and his profile totally fits the role that we've seen Gabe Davis have under Ken Dorsey. A deep threat, a guy who runs those go routes to clear the space for short and intermediate routes, a guy who can take advantage of one-on-ones in those go and fly routes and win the contested catches. He has solid speed. He run the same time as Gabe, so he can beat people deep. He has the size to go up and bring down those passes. He can be a solid weapon in the red zone. He has the hands, field drops, what's important. And from the moment he really establishes himself as a deep threat, no doubt people are going to fall on those curl routes and hook routes, comeback routes, just like we've seen from Gabe Davis doing. So I really like this pick in Justin Shorter, because that's a guy who really can be the Gabe Davis replacement 1 year from now, if Gabe really plays what we expect from him this season and prices himself out of Buffalo next year. So it's good to have a plan B. It's good to have a guy with a lot of potential to be developed there. It's good to have a guy who maybe, if you miss Gabe for some times down the road, during the season, he might be able to contribute and go up and bring down those passes when Josh needs it. So another value pick here, and another guy with a lot of potential, former 5-star recruit. Really like this pick. Dorian Williams in the 3rd round. I'm gonna talk this one after finishing my draft recap, because mostly this leading the chart is about the linebacker position, and I'm going to talk a lot about Dorian Williams later on. What I can say right now is that I like the pick. Dorian was on some of my mock drafts, not in round 3, but that's a guy who I really envisioned as a nice project, a nice prospect to be prepared to become our middle linebacker, or even when needed a replacement for Milano. So I like the player. I maybe didn't like so much the place he was picked, but with the run at the linebacker position, it was needed to pick him there, or you could run short of really capable, promising linebackers. So I can understand the pick here. 2nd round, O'Cyrus Torrence, guard of Florida, a guy who was mocked a lot to the Bills in the 1st round, a guy who, after everybody fell in love with him early in the draft process, most people made a turn on him because of, he doesn't look like the archetype to Cromer's offensive lineman or to what the Bills has drafted and used. And that's true. He's bigger than our regular offensive lineman. He's heavier. He doesn't have the lateral movement that Cromer would like to see from his offensive lineman. But no doubt the guy was a big time value at the 59th pick overall, second round. And I love the pick here. I think he really can be a plug and play guy if the Bills don't go the direction they went with AJ Peneza, with even Boogie Basham, and asking O'Cyrus to change his body, to drop weight, to change who he is. I really hope they don't do that, because O'Cyrus Torrence, as he is, he's a great offensive guard. He might not be a fit, but in this case, don't ask from him what we've been asking from others. Just ask from him to of being himself, because that's a guy who can man up one-on-one the best defensive tackles in college. There is tape of him dealing with Carter just fine against Georgia. He played really well in the Senior Bowl. He has experience. He hardly ever gets beat inside and is good at pass protection. That's different from other offensive linemen we have. That's a guy you can simply pick on running behind him, and you can trust him to get that initial push and get that 1-2 tough yards for you, for your running back, or even for Josh. So I really like Torrence here. I really think he can really quickly beat maybe Ryan Bates and make Bates or first option as a backup offensive lineman. Remember, this draft really confirmed what Brandon Beane has told us all along, and a lot of people didn't trust him about Spencer Brown. The guy is here really high on Spencer Brown. They see Spencer Brown having a nice offseason and becoming a better right tackle going forward. Dude has all the athletic ability in the world to do so, and they trust him. So maybe Bates can become a plan B at right tackle too, if he loses his job to Torrence. Or maybe the time for Torrence to really get ready is the time to Spencer Brown to prove himself. And if it doesn't work out, you can move Bates to right tackle and insert Torrence at right guard, things like that. So there's going to be battles inside for the right guard spot, for the left guard spot. And even Mitch Morse, who's our best offensive lineman, in my opinion, I can't really picture him being too comfortable, because that's a guy who, if he's cut, he opens a lot of cap space so Bean can work with. So I don't see it happening right now. I think it's gonna be needed a lot from McGovern, from Bates, from Torrence, from Edwards, from all those guys competing to make Morse expendable, and I don't see it happening right now. But there are a lot of people competing there, and he gotta be at his best. And we need to remember, we are unfortunately a concussion way of losing Morse maybe for a long period of time, right? Edwards, who was brought in out of the Rams and has experience working with Cromer, is another guy who struggled with concussion. So we need to be aware of this, and Torrence really can be a starter day one. That's my hope for him. And then Dalton Kincaid, round 1, pick 25th with a trade up. After a run for the wide receiver position, this pick is really a no-brainer in my opinion. Yes, that's a tight end. When he was drafted, I was like, oh my God, a tight end. Okay. But as you watch Kincaid's tape, you really realize that that's a guy who can be used in several ways. That's a guy who can be moved around. That's a guy who can even line up on the perimeter, can line up outside even if you need it. And he has a big time role as a big slot guy. And as Eric Turner from Cover One has pointed out recently, the Bills has lost a lot of their possibilities of throwing the ball in the middle of the field with some consistency, since Cole Beasley wasn't him anymore. So I think Kincaid really, in different ways, different from Bees, who used it to separate so quickly with his quickness and his explosion in a short space, short yardage. I think Kincaid, with his size and his suddenness, he can be this kind of target for Josh Allen in the middle of the field, even lining up in the slot, not necessarily taking snaps away from Dawson Knox, who's really important as a blocker. He's right now, no doubt, the better all-around tight end. But Kincaid could be a huge mismatch, a guy who can run those seam routes for Josh and really cause problems for opposing defenses. Then he can beat zones. He can find soft spots against zone coverage. He can beat man, because if you line up in a nickel defense and put your nickel corner on Kincaid, you have a huge size advantage over that nickel corner. So Kincaid can beat them with size, with strength. If you line a linebacker to cover Kincaid, he's faster, he's quicker. So I'm really excited to see Kincaid in this offense. At first, I thought like, okay, Dorsey is gonna need to find different ways and maybe use more the 12 personnel with two tight ends and change the way the offense operates. But after watching more from Kincaid, I don't think it's really necessary. I think Kincaid can simply line up in the slot and do a lot of our previous slots were asked for. And when people say Kincaid isn't a really good blocker, don't forget that it's talking about him as a tight end. He's maybe not a really good inline blocker, blocking defensive ends or linebackers. But if you line him up in the slot and he needs to deal with smaller defensive backs, he's going to do his job. He's going to block better than any slot receivers, no doubt. So there is a lot of praise going to Gabriel Davis' way because of the way he blocks people. And no doubt Kincaid can do that too as a receiver. So I'm really happy with Kincaid's pick. I think he offers sure hands, something we haven't seen from Knox. We haven't seen, especially from Gabe lately. Kincaid has those sure hands, and he can catch everything Josh throws his way. He can get open. He can beat the defenses different ways. So that's another weapon, and that offers a lot of variety for Dorsey. Because if we're going to play bigger and line up bigger guys on Kincaid, you can use maybe Hardy as a quick slot guy. You have several options. Dorsey has several options at his disposal, so he can beat opposing defenses in a variety of different ways, and that's really cool to have. If we remember, Brian Dable came from those Patriots tree and the Inhart Perkins system where offenses try to really attack the flaws of the opposing defenses, and we saw in the past in those Patriots Brady-led teams how they could spread out the defenses and throw the ball all day long, or how they could simply line up with heavy package and run the ball down your throat. So I think with the personnel that the Bills have added this offseason via draft, via free agency, I think the options are out there now. So Dorsey can attack defenses this way and not necessarily just spread out and throw all game long. But if they need to run more two tight end sets, run more the ball, he has two options at power back with Latavius Murray being added right now. I think Latavius Murray is a nice B plan to Damian Harris if he can stay healthy. But you have the power in your room backfield now. You have the speed in Cook and Hines. So you have a lot of options, a lot of solid weapons, so Dorsey can work with this unit. And let's remember, despite of all the criticism, that was a really solid, a really good offense last season, and they just got better. So the offensive line taking a step in the right direction already is a huge thing for this offense, right? Better protection for Josh and things like that. And now add the weapons that they've been able to add, like Kincaid and Hardy and all the guys. So I think they are in the right track, and the Bills got better in this offseason. This team is more complete. This offense offers more possibilities to Dorsey to work with, and I hope they can quickly be back at that level that we saw in the last two Brian Daboll's games in the playoffs against the Patriots and the Chiefs. I think that was the best we've seen from this offense since those guys were brought along, and I believe Dorsey has some weapons to work with now, some material to work and to get better. And the same thing can be said about McDermott. I think the additions on the defensive side of the ball weren't that much, right? We didn't see so many additions on the defensive side of the ball, but Sean McDermott is calling the shots now. He's directly calling the shots, calling the defense, calling the plays. And without Leslie Frazier in the mold, Leslie Frazier was a guy who came along from Tony Dungy 3 and those Tampa 2 defenses. And we saw a lot of Tampa 2, a lot of cover 2 in our defense last season. And with the change, McDermott now calling the defense and really running his style of D, okay, I think we'll see some differences, and maybe McDermott's gonna run more of his favorite quarters, cover 4 quarters, and it's gonna change the way they use the pieces. The Bills, they don't need to run their usual 4-2 nickel defense all game long. All right, they can change it. They can change to different fronts. McDermott will have options with different personnel. The additions made so far, they scream that direction. I think it's been pretty clear to me, and people has been so worried about the loss of Tremaine Edmonds. And here is where I will start to talk about the linebackers and Dorian Williams pick, but not before asking you to subscribe and to like this. Hit the like button, like this video, the Leading the Charge. Always here in English or Portuguese, depends of the day, right? For Latin America, Bills Mafia, and Brazilian speaking language, Portuguese speaking language, sorry, like Brazil and other countries. So also in Portuguese, but sometimes in English. Hit that like button, subscribe to Buffalo Rumblings channel, and if you're watching at another moment, comment. I want to see your opinion about all of these situations going here. Let's focus on the running back, on the linebacker pick. Sorry, and Dorian Williams. A lot of people were mad at this pick, and let me be straight to you here. Being he used to double dip in a lot of his drafts, right? Even before arriving, McDermott's first draft here, he drafted Milano and Tanner Vallejo at linebacker positions with a double dip. And then since Bean has arrived, we've seen drafts with Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins at wide receiver. We've seen drafts with Greg Rousseau and Boogie Basham at defensive end. So we've seen a lot of double dips, and the Bills didn't double dip in this draft, but they double dipped in the linebacker position at the same exact spot. Round 3, pick 91st in this draft, Dorian Williams, linebacker out of Tulane. 1 year ago, round 3, pick 89th was Terrell Bernard out of Baylor. Similar kind of linebackers, and both of them supposed to be better suited to Milano's role, not to Tremaine Edmonds' role, right? And here is where I started to. I've been calling it out, people out for quite some time right now, because if the guys who make the decisions, if the guy who builds the roster in being, if the guy who calls the defense now, literally in Sean McDermott, if they pick those guys in the round 3, right, to be their linebackers, man, they aren't picking those guys to be Matt Milano's backups for the entire careers. They aren't this dumb. They have a plan. And people are too focused on, oh, but they aren't Tremaine Edmonds' size. They don't have the size needed. Oh, because the archetype for the middle linebacker under McDermott is different. So let's talk about this for a bit. I have some stuff to share with you. Let me bring it to the screen. Let's start from here. Those are the guys we are asking maybe Bernard, maybe Dodson, maybe Spector, Klein, or even now Dorian Williams to replace. Those are the guys, all right? Guys who have close to 10 RES scores as linebackers. So those guys don't grow on trees, right? They aren't the rule, they are the exception. And especially talking about Tremaine Edmonds at this size, almost 6'5", all right, over 250 pounds. I even believe he's close to 260 nowadays with the way he's got bigger since he arrived in the NFL. Those guys aren't normal. A guy like Tremaine Edmonds isn't normal, isn't the rule at the middle linebacker position. There is a reason, okay? There is a reason why Tremaine Edmonds was literally the only linebacker who got the bag in this free agency, right? A lot of good linebackers out there available, even former All-Pros and probable Hall of Famer guys like Lavonte David, Bobby Wagner, but only Tremaine Edmonds got the bag. And that's why. That's a guy who you don't see every day. A guy who's 6'5", over 250 pounds, and that fast, right? We don't have the agility score in his RES, but you have the speed here, and that's not normal. You simply don't find guys like this. There is a reason Jack Campbell was drafted in 18th overall. Okay, a guy who was supposed to be even available, even in the second round. That's a good player, and he had an amazing combine, and his score, his RES score, you really can't see it in his tape. But since he could be able to take advantage of the combine, the Lions made the pick and drafted him really high. Why? Because if you need to compare him to Tremaine Edmonds, he compares favorably, but it's not normal. And Luke Kuechly, Luke Kuechly isn't Tremaine Edmonds' size. Luke Kuechly arrived in the NFL. He came to the NFL as a 6'3" guy, right? 6'3", 242 pounds, and a stud, athletically, all you want from your linebacker. So fast, so quick, a real stud here, right? So those are the guys we are asking our linebackers to replace. And remember, they aren't guys who are getting $18 million to do so. They are guys who were drafted in the third round, not in the second, not in the first. If we talk about Dorian Williams, if we talk about Terrell Bernard. And it's expected to have a decrease or a decrease in the performances at the middle linebacker. After all, the guy playing there, it was a first-round pick, a guy who got developed since he was 19 years old. And don't forget, when Edmonds arrived, the torch was passed to him by Kyle Williams to be the leader of this defense, right? So as a 19-year-old, he was developed as the middle linebacker, as the leader of the defense, and even the team meetings, the defensive meetings led by Kyle Williams, Kyle started to pass along to Tremaine Edmonds. So the guy was prepared since he was 19 to be the leader of this defense, to be Luke Kuechly. Let's put it straight on here. He was prepared to be Luke Kuechly of this defense. But until this last season, he wasn't 100% lock for all Bills fans as our middle linebacker of the future. People had questions. People questioned his play and his tape and how he had performed. But last season he played really well. And still there were people saying, oh, Edmonds don't play as big as he is and things like that. Oh, Edmonds gets blocked too easily. He can't fight out of blocks, shed blocks as you want a guy of this size and things like that. So let me tell one thing: nobody is okay. Even look quickly when he was a prospect out of Boston College. There were some reports, some scouting reports, just like this one, okay, from Bleacher Report, for example. Quickly is an average athlete with good vision but poor strength and no ability to work off blockers. Quickly success in NFL will be based solely on how well the defensive line in front of him plays. NFL guards, fullbacks, and tight ends will dominate quickly at the point of attack. Look at this kind of thing written. But that's Bleacher Report, and okay, but in fact, there were questions about how Luke Quickly could deal with blockers, and he wasn't the first overall pick. Okay, the value for a middle linebacker, but he was drafted 12th overall, if I'm not mistaken, and he was a stud. But look, we don't see middle linebackers who can shed blocks so dominantly and so often. We can see tapes of Fred Warner being brought to a walk for some offensive linemen. We saw it with Edmonds. We see it with every linebacker in the league. When a guard put the hands on those guys, it's tough for them, all right? And they have some trouble to deal with it. They need to be clean to play at their best. It's not Edmonds it's not just Fred Warner, or it wasn't Quickly. It's with everybody. So the Bills need to keep those linebackers clean so they can play really well. And despite Edmonds' size, he wasn't different from Milano or Warner or Quickly or everybody else who needs to who count with some good performance from the defensive line in front of them so they can really play well. It's no surprise Edmonds did so well last season when Daquan Jones finally became what we were told about Starlo Tulele, a guy who occupies blockers, keeps him free. And Daquan Jones was this guy, has been this guy for us. And that helped Edmonds a lot this season, right? So after watching who we are asking to be replaced, Edmonds and Quickly, let me bring along the RES score of our third round pick, Dorian Williams, and comparing with some people who were available on the street in this past free agency. Let me start with a guy who got signed by the Dolphins, and everybody were like, oh, that's a great signing by the Dolphins. That's a great linebacker, a guy who played really well against us several times, a guy who wasn't expected to be this good when he got to the league, but he became a real good middle linebacker. I'm talking about David Long Jr., who played for the Titans and now is with the Dolphins. And let's see how Dorian Williams compares to him. Let me throw it out there and show you. So, Dorian Williams versus David Long Jr. Dorian is bigger than David Long Jr. Okay. Long's probably heavier right now, right? But he came to the league as a 227-pound linebacker. It's almost the same weight as Dorian Williams, but Williams is clearly the better athlete here. All right, longer arms, bigger, faster, right? More explosive. We don't have his shuttle and three cones to talk about agility, but here's a guy who has done a great job as a middle linebacker in the NFL, and Dorian Williams is a better athlete overall, no doubt. Okay, so there is no reason to not believe Dorian can play middle linebacker. Oh, but you're talking about David Long. David Long is in the rule. He's the exception. Okay, and let's talk about other other people who were available there. Let me bring in Lavonte David, because that's the guy who a lot of people wanted, and we're talking about a big time Hall of Fame kind of guy, right? So let me bring him in. So here it is, the RAS of Lavonte David. Size, still Dorian is bigger, and he's not as heavier as David, but we gotta remember that what Benny said in his press conference about Dorian Williams, and then he even changed it a little bit later. But the initial press conference, Bean said, "Look, Dorian is a year away of contributing the defense. He's going to be developed. He's going to be brought along. He needs to learn the defense because the defense he used to play in is way more simplistic than the Bills defense." And all of this makes sense to take away the responsibility, the expectation out of Dorian Williams. That's a guy who can contribute day one in the special teams and be a stud. But I really believe despite the third round grade, he was brought in as a guy to be developed, a guy who's at least 10 weeks away, for example, during the season of being able to get his opportunity. Why do I say that? Because the same thing happened to Terrell Bernard last season. Okay, he was drafted in the third round. People were like, "Oh, maybe the Bills are gonna play more for three bays and use three linebackers." No, Bernard was brought in as a Matt Milano backup, but no doubt they thought about him as a possibility for this season, since they weren't sure about being able to keep Tremaine Edmonds. And remember, if they really wanted to keep that stud linebacker with size, speed like Tremaine Edmonds, the unicorn linebacker, let me put it this way, they would be able to do so. There were ways to overpay. If this position is so important, if Edmonds was so irreplaceable, they would be able to find ways overpay, keep him in Buffalo no matter what. I will go even further and say, if he really did become look quickly in this defense, no way they let him go and they overpay and keep him in. Okay, so if they were comfortable with Tremaine Edmonds leaving, I'm not out there saying they believe that Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, or any other guy will be able to play as well as Edmonds or better than Edmonds, because you might get a decrease in the way in the performance from your middle linebacker, but you also get a big decrease in the cap space, right, with those guys playing in. So they have a plan, and look at this comparison. Dorian still compares pretty well against Lavonte David, a Hall of Fame kind of linebacker who played middle linebacker all his career for the Buccaneers, and a lot of people wanted him as Edmonds' replacement. If Lavonte David could replace Edmonds or quickly role in this defense, Dorian Williams might be able to do so. Okay, I have more people here, more linebacker comparisons to show you, and let me bring another free agent that was available here, TJ Edwards, the guy who played for the Super Bowl contending Philadelphia Eagles, started for them, played for that amazing defense, and was able to contribute so they could get to the Super Bowl. He's going to be teammates with Edmonds, also signed with the Bears. And here's TJ Edwards to Dorian Williams comparison. Okay, heavier, yes, but two pounds heavier than Dorian, and smaller, right? Nowhere near as athletic as Dorian Williams is. And the guy could do an amazing job as the middle linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles. What's the difference? Book up the defensive tackle rotation, book up your defensive line, have good defensive line play in front of those linebackers so they can be kept clean and play really well. So The free agent guys I already showed you are proof that those guys aren't undersized. They are undersized compared to Edmonds. I think even Brandon Bean said it recently. But those guys, they have linebacker size, especially in today's NFL, and they have the athletic ability to be nice pieces in the in this chess match that Sean McDermott is going to play with opposing offense. Let me bring the guy who will partner them, right? Will partner Dorian if Dorian wins the job, who I don't believe is going to happen this season, but we'll see. Matt Milano. I brought in alongside Matt Milano Thomas Davis because that was the guy who was the partner, was Luke Kuechly's partner in crime in Carolina, right? Oh, Sean McDermott always had big guys at middle linebacker. Look at the Kuechly, look at Edmonds. Okay, before Milano, he used to have Thomas Davis alongside those guys. 6'1", 230 pounds, and not as athletic as Milano. Before Thomas Davis, there was no Milano type playing the two linebackers who never left the field for McDermott. Oh, he drafted Shaq Thompson. True, Shaq Thompson is more in the mode of Matt Milano, but Matt Milano was the first one to become an every down player for McDermott. Look at Milano, 6 foot, almost 6 foot and a half, 223 pounds, lighter than Bernard, lighter than Dorian, all right? And his RES is 7.12. He isn't really 4.6. He isn't as athletic as Dorian Williams, all right? So Milano is an all-pro, guys. Milano is the guy in the middle of our defense nowadays, okay? It's not like they were forced to make a choice between Milano or Edmonds, but the way things went with Milano signing below the market value and things like that made the decision easier to go with Milano and not overpay Edmonds. Again, they could have done that if they really wanted to have Edmonds as a totally necessary middle linebacker piece, but they choose not to. All right, and that's why I'm showing those comparisons. And the last one I want to show you, okay, is the guy who I believe is gonna play this season, and that guy is not Dorian Williams. Dorian Williams simply is brought in the same situation as he was brought last year, and that guy is Terrell Bernard. Terrell Bernard is even more athletic, a little bit more athletic than Dorian Williams. He's a little bit smaller, right? Less than, it's almost the same size in height, and the weight is probably the same at this moment because Bernard has had an entire season in the NFL weight room. So Bernard is older, he's 24, and Dorian is 21. And Bernard is even more athletic, okay? He's faster, he's quicker, okay? But he has shorter arms. Dorian Williams has longer arms than Bernard. The thing is, guys, the same way they brought in Terrell Bernard last season. Oh, but he didn't see the field because it was the plan. All right. Oh, when he saw the field, it wasn't good. He didn't play well against the Jets. Sure. But if you believe they're gonna give up on one of their prospects that they invested a third-round pick on just a year ago, okay, because one bad game, a bad game where the entire defense didn't play well. And let's not just act like we've never seen our defense being run over with Edmonds, Milano, and all the starting defense playing, because it happened. It happened sometimes under McDermott, the games that we couldn't stop the run to save our lives, right? So it happened with 6'5", 250 pounds Tremaine Edmonds. It can happen with Bernard or Dorian Williams. But let's not take away just one game to give up on some of those prospects, right? So I really believe, as the guy who is here an entire year, has been brought along, has learned the defense. As being said, it's more complicated than the defense Darwin has played in Tulane. I think the man of the moment for the coaches and for the Bills is Terrell Bernard. I think he will have all the chances to win the competition. And if he doesn't win the competition against Dodson, against Spector, against Klein, sure, then we should be really worried, and then maybe Terrell Bernard simply isn't the guy they thought they were getting when they talked to David Aranda from Baylor and brought him in. But let's not forget he played for a totally different kind of defense in Baylor, right? And now he has learned the defense, um, and he's been in this program for a year now. So I really believe Bernard is the guy who will get the early playing time at the middle linebacker position this season, and it's up to him to hold down that spot. All right, as Dorian is going to be developed. And I love Dorian Williams as a fallback plan. I love him as a guy to be developed. And if Bernard proves that he isn't the guy, Dorian Williams probably will be ready on the wings when his time comes to get his opportunity. Nobody here is a sure thing. Bernard isn't a sure thing. Dorian Williams isn't a sure thing. And we have Spector, who might be a possibility. Even Spector, I believe, will have a shot before Dorian, probably, because the guy has been there already learning the defense. And McDermott talks all the time how the middle linebacker needs to be able to communicate with his teammates, to make checks, make calls, and position his teammates on the field. And that's interesting because if you go if we come back in 1 year and check what was said about Bernard in the draft from the Athletic, from Joe Buscaglia here, Brandon Bean comments on Bernard: super instinctive. You can blitz anybody, but he's got a feel for it, a knack for it, right? He's fun to watch, and especially this part. The Bills called Bernard an alpha leader of the Baylor defense, right? And that's exactly the biggest point that McDermott preaches when he talks middle linebacker, the leader of the defense, the ability to make the checks, to communicate. And everybody's too worried about Bernard's size or lack of size and lack of bulk, maybe, or because he had one bad game last season and didn't see the field. He was being prepared. He was being prepared for this moment, the moment that the Bills might not be able to keep Edmonds. It arrived. The Bills don't have Edmonds anymore. And I really believe Bernard is the guy who's going to win this job early. And then it's up in the air. I've been joking around like, oh, I'm the president of Terrell Bernard's fan club. And when he's balling out, don't forget about me when I was calling it out. But jokes aside, I have no idea if Bernard is going to become a great middle linebacker, if he's going to be just a solid one, or if he's going to bust totally out and not be able to play well for this defense. But I don't believe he's not going to have his shot. I don't believe he's going to play because Bean and McDermott didn't have a plan and drafted guys to back up Milano, and then out of nothing they lost Tremaine Edmonds, and they were like, oh, we gotta play those guys who weren't supposed to be playing there. No, I really believe McDermott has a plan, and I really believe McDermott wants this kind of linebackers. So it doesn't matter if you look at the past and check and say, oh, look, McDermott had Quickly and had Edmonds. This is the archetype for his middle linebacker. Dude can change. He changed it from Thomas Davis to he envisioned it changing for an aging Thomas Davis to Shaq Thompson. And then in reality, it just happened with the Bills already when Milano took over for Raymond Humber, who also was 5'11", a short linebacker, but he was bulkier, right? He was over 230 pounds. And Milano was in and out of the lineup when he was a rookie, with Humber having most of the snaps until Milano was ready to take over, and he never looked back and became the playmaker that we've been used to. So Edmonds is in Chicago, and McDermott wants this kind of linebacker to have alongside Milano. Quicker, faster, guys who can run with the tight ends of the world, with running backs, guys who can even run with some slot guys and tight ends down the seam. And maybe it was easier to run the Tampa 2 that Frazier really liked to call with Edmonds' size and length. But with McDermott maybe switching back more to quarters coverage, cover 4 more often, even trying to run more man coverage, and he has more pieces to do so with Kyle Elam at cornerback and Trey Davis White back. Milano, Bernard, and Dorian Williams, those guys can run with people. Okay, let me show one interesting thing. And here I ask you to not focus on the overall score, but if we compare Taron Johnson, okay, to Dorian Williams, ignore the overall score because Taron is being graded here as a linebacker, right? But if we compare the athletic numbers, Dorian run the same 40, okay? I won't say it's a tick faster, right? And the 20 split, same thing, a tick faster. The 10 split, a tick faster. So we are talking about a guy who can run the same as your nickel cornerback, right? And if we compare him to Taylor Rapp, it's the same. He's more athletic than Taylor Rapp. And if Dorian is more athletic than Taron Johnson, than Taylor Rapp, Terrell Bernard is even more athletic because he's a little more athletic than Dorian Williams. So we're talking about a group of linebackers that can run as well as your nickel corner, as well as your safeties, or even better if we consider Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde ages. So we're talking about real fast dudes at linebacker position, quicker guys, and I'm really excited to see the plan that McDermott has with those guys there. We can run different fronts. Poona Ford was just signed. That's a big time addition because you can book up that D-tackle rotation early on early downs, run downs, and even play Daquan Jones and Poona Ford together inside and keep Bernard free, Milano free to do their thing. And I'm excited to see those guys. Because Edmonds and Milano were able to change roles during game or even from play to play. But when you have a guy with the size of Edmonds, you prefer to have this guy running down the seam or patrolling the middle of field in the Tampa 2 or with his length and not Milano. And then you maybe use Milano more on blitzes and things like that. But if you have Milano and another similar guy, it can make things tougher for opposing quarterbacks to recognize who's blitzing, who's staying. And so McDermott will be able to get creative with those pieces and change this defense. I don't believe we're going to see the same kind of defense next season. I think the Bills realize that they are good. Yes, they have a great defense. They have a great offense. But when playoff time arrived and when it became more of a chess match against tougher opponents, they weren't being on par of this situation. They could have been better. And so I think they realized that, and they added pieces that give their coaches, Dorsey on offense, McDermott on defense, opportunities to game plan better, to really game plan and have answers for what they throw at them. Okay, I talked about the having answers on offense, being able to run the ball when you want to get bigger on offense and run down the throat of opposing defense when they play small ball, or simply spreading them out when they go with heavier package and make them pay. I think our defense starts to have the same kind of approach, and you have now quicker linebackers, faster linebackers. You have in Taylor Rapp a really agile guy who can play nickel linebacker too, and can play safety, can play nickel corner if Taron Johnson is not available, because you don't want to play a lot of Siren New in your defense. We already tried it and it didn't look good. So you have options. If you want to play more base 4-3, you have three guys in Milano, Bernard, and Dorian who are really fast and can play base 4-3 without sacrificing athleticism in your linebacker group and even the secondary. So McDermott will be able to change the approach and not be so easy to recognize with the 4-2 nickel defense all the time. Change fronts, book up with Puna Ford, Daquan Jones, go small with Oliver, and on clear passing situations, prepare different kind of blitzes. With the Panthers, he used it to blitz a lot Kurt Coleman, and he had three safeties that he played a lot. Now he has this possibility with reps. So we got to remember, it's not like all of those guys are sure things, and some guys can fail and cannot become what they hope they become. So Bernard might not work out, and maybe we can be surprised by Spector, who is very athletic too, and also fits this mode that I'm talking about. Dorian Williams can be prepared. Rep can be a possibility. So you have a lot of answers for a long season when you lose some players. Let's remember, Milano has been pretty healthy the last couple of seasons, but he had his fair share of trouble also, healthy-wise. So if you miss Milano, you have a pair of athletic linebackers who can run and can do the same kind of thing. So that's why I understand this pick on Dorian Williams in the third round. They double-dip third-round picks on linebackers in the last couple of seasons to still have the same guys. And I just think Dorian Williams will be right in Terrell Bernard's role from last season. Terrell Bernard's role was as a backup to Milano, a guy learning the defense, a guy being prepared for the future. I think Dorian is exactly there right now. He can surprise everybody, coming ready and give a run for Bernard or for Spector's money. But I won't be expecting it so soon. I think it's time to Bernard to get his shot, and I'm excited to see him having this shot, and he will have an opportunity to become this leader of the defense, something that everybody really hyped on when he was drafted. And then Dorian just being prepared on the wings and being ready when his number is called. It's exciting. I like it. I think it's really good. And in this third round pick, I was expecting maybe Siaki Ika to be a big defensive tackle to keep the linebackers free, but they were able to sing Puna Ford, who's an upgrade over Ika. At least we don't know what we're getting from Ika, but Puna Ford is the real deal. That's a guy who was supposed to get 10 million on the free agents market, but signed it for a small value for us. So I'm really excited to see the direction they are going, both sides of the ball. I think the drafted contributed a lot to it, and the free agents, we didn't have the big splash move in the free agency, but solid, really, really solid, exciting pieces were added. And we have, again, potential all across the board. We have some solid veterans that we can trust. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the plan being executed. And again, it might work, it might not work, but they have a plan, guys. It's not like what are they doing? What are they doing with drafting those guys who can't play this position? sorry, but they can play this position. Adjustments might be needed, but it's possible, and McDermott has a plan. Just in the last leading the charge in Portuguese last Sunday, I made a comparison to a soccer situation, and for people who like soccer, Pep Guardiola, or for people who watch Ted Lasso, right? Because he was mentioned just in the last episode. But Pep Guardiola is considered the best coach in the world on soccer. He coached Barcelona for so many years. He played for Barcelona when Johan Cruyff, a guy who was unique as a coach, coached Barcelona. And nowadays he coaches Manchester City. And when he played for Barcelona, Barcelona always had center forwards, strikers, who used to do that job: score goals, poach goals, hold the ball up front, be a target to crosses, things like that. Bigger guys capable of doing this kind of stuff. But when Guardiola started to coach Barcelona, and after he changed the scheme and he used Lionel Messi as a false nine, he created the false nine position, and that's with a small guy in Lionel Messi, who a lot of people has as the GOAT in soccer. I don't, okay? But so Messi was the false nine, and I'm pretty sure everybody back in the day were like, Guardiola is crazy because Messi can't be a striker. He's not big enough. He's not. He is creative. He gotta come back to build up the game because he's creative and assist other guys and things like that. And so he's not a striker. Who's gonna be the target when you cross the ball into the box and things like that? And Guardiola simply had a plan, and he played Messi as a false nine, and he won everything with Messi as a false nine. And then he moved to Bayern Munich and to other clubs with pretty much the same strategy. And recently, his team, Manchester City, just paid a huge amount to have Erling Haaland, a big-time striker, big guy, great on headers, the archetype for a striker. And everybody were telling the opposite, like, oh, Guardiola can't work with a striker because he's used to the false nine and things like that. And he simply adjusted, and Erling Haaland is scoring goal after goals and breaking records, and Manchester City is just fine winning games, winning titles for sure. So what I mean that we have a good defensive mind in McDermott, and if he's picking guys with this size, okay, they might not be able to do what Edmunds did, but maybe with some changes, they might be even better. And if they can play similar to that level that Edmunds played, we are not paying close to 18 million to those guys. So they have a plan, and I hope it works, and I'm confident it's going to work. It might not work, and a lot of people will be able to say, oh, it was clear that it wouldn't work. Sometimes it doesn't, but I wouldn't be so worried about it before really watching what McDermott has in plan. Okay, guys, that's my view about that. Those are my thoughts about the draft and about the linebacker position. And let me give it a look in the comment section so I can interact with some of you, have the options and the opinions, and just interact a little bit. Valdir is here. We have a pool right now, Puna 4. Just like I said, right? We need those big belly guys. We need to beef up the defensive tackle position to give Bernard, to give Spector, to give Dorian Williams later on an opportunity, a shot at really working, at doing well. But it was no different for Edmunds too, right? So it's a great addition. Billy is excited about Puna. Valdir, Kincaid Short helped reduce the total number of drop those picks are touchdowns. For sure. I just think, obviously, those are rookies, and they gotta get developed, and they will make some mistakes too. It's the NFL. It's another level, but it's really cool to have those kind of guys being drafted and developed. Rodrigo thinks it's a splash move to add Puna. I really think it is for a defensive tackle rotation, right? I don't think Ed Oliver is going to be traded at this point, but depending of the situation, guys, depending of the training camps, of how healthy Jordan Phillips is, and how prepared our defensive tackles are for the competition, it might make Ed Oliver expendable. And it could open 10 million in cap space. Plus, obviously, Oliver in contract season, he's gonna be a force rushing the passer, and that's a nice option to keep him too. Yes, Bean didn't address it on the draft, Rodrigo, because he said that the board simply wasn't falling the way he wanted at the position. And like I said, I at the moment of the pick, I wanted Siaki Ika instead of Dorian Williams. But with the way it panned out after adding Puna Ford, I'm totally happy with this haul. Exactly, need to trust the process. And I see a lot of people now buying in on Dorian Williams, and I don't get why people gave up on Terrell Bernard so early. Okay, because one bad game, because he didn't see the field. Guys, if Dorian Williams don't see the field this year, he probably will see in the special teams, but in the defense he don't see the field. It's the plan. He wasn't drafted to be the answer right now. The answer right now is the competition between Bernard, Spector, Dodson, Klein is out there as a floor guy in the middle of the defense who knows how to do it. And Dorian will need to surprise people to get an opportunity in the defense this season. But Terrell Bernard, I'm really excited to see him getting his shot. Um abraço pro Rinaldo aí. He's not understand anything, but he's here. Julian Williams. Dorian Williams will be defensive captain. No doubt, Thomas. Dorian Williams is the same kind of guy as Terrell Bernard coming in. Leader. He was a leader in Tulane. Okay. And he's this kind of leader. He can eventually become this captain of the defense. I just think Bernard will get his shot, being the older guy, being 1 year ahead, learning the defense and going through the process already as a member of the linebacker room. I think Bernard will have the shot first and will be able, will have the opportunity to hold down that spot. But Dorian Williams definitely will be prepared to have his shot too. Thomas thinks he's gonna be a starter. I wouldn't bet on it for this season. Okay, I really don't believe. Maybe if the guys don't take advantage of their opportunities, then later on the season, just like Milano in his rookie year. But the Bills are in a different moment right now compared to when Milano was a rookie. So I don't believe they're gonna throw him as a starter this season. If we look even at on the Chiefs defense, right? Their linebacker, Nick Bolton, second round guy, in year one, he didn't play a lot. All right, he played a little bit early downs, but he wasn't on the field a lot. And then you look in the second season, the guy was a stud, and on the Super Bowl, he was the MVP, in my opinion. Guy was playing, he was all over the field. I think Dorian can go this trajectory just like Bolton. But again, I'm excited to see Bernard first. My concern with Williams is that he's not a good fit and they try to adapt him to Edmonds' role. Undersized compared to what's a limited unique role previously held by Adams. That's what I'm talking about, Matt. They won't ask Bernard or Williams to do exactly what Edmonds did. It's gonna change. They have a plan. Okay, it's different. They won't play as much as cover two as they used to play under Leslie Frazier, and obviously they will need to deal with differences in size and characteristics from Edmonds, but they have a plan. Otherwise, they wouldn't double dip on the same kind of prospect. I just show you the RES score. Bean and Bernard and Dorian are the same guy mostly, with Bernard being a little bit more athletic one, and Dorian being the a little bigger guy or longer guy with a little bit more of length. Uh, no doubt, Thomas, and the same can be said about Bernard. Yeah, everybody hyped and raved about Bernard being this kind of player, a guy who lives in the film room, a guy who's a leader of men, things like that. So that's it. Sarah Christine, I can't believe you got Puna. No doubt, Sarah. I'm excited too. Yes, no doubt. I also believe so, Sarah. They are changing things. They are changing things, no doubt. Marcelo, praticando inglês. Abraço, Marcelo. It's not that Bills fans gave up on him. It's that he reached third for a special teams player when he had many other needs. And like Bernard, just not in the third. Look, Sarah, Bernard, just like I said, I think the way they envision Dorian right now is the same for Bernard. Okay, he was learning the defense and he'll get his shot. And I think you and a lot of people might be surprised by what he can do. Okay, Sarah believes Dorian is more talented. It's might be, might not be. We'll see this season. Okay, but I'm excited to see Bernard in this defense. I think he can be this kind of leader of the defense. And again, I think they are adjusting, they are changing their defense, and this lack of size compared to Edmonds won't be a problem. It's not like every other team in the NFL has a 6'5", 255-pound middle linebacker playing for them, right? It's the exception. The Bears has it right now. The Lions has it for investing in a first-round pick, 18th overall, on one of those type of the guys, but nobody else has this kind of guy. So I'm excited and I'm curious, but I trust the process. I trust McDermott on the defensive side of the ball, and I want to see his defense being run with these interchangeable pieces at the linebacker position, and Bernard, Milano, Dorian Williams, and even Braylon Spector are these kind of guys. All right, Dodson and Klein are less athletic, and they will play only if their prospects really aren't up to their standards or for the expectation. We'll see. Time will tell. But that's it, Bills Mafia. Thank you so much for staying with me for a little bit more than 1 hour, almost 1 hour 15. It was a pleasure to interact with you and to let you know about my thoughts about the draft and how I envision this linebacker battle going forward. Hit the like button, subscribe to Buffalo Rumblings channel, and I will be back on Sunday, all right, at 8 p.m. East. I will have Matt Parino with me here, reporter from Syracuse.com, and we're going to talk a lot of things who have been discussed by Bills Mafia, the addition of Puna Ford, Latavius Murray, linebackers, and now all Bills news during this week. I will have Matt Parino here discussing and talking to all you Bills Mafia. Thank you so much for being with me. See you next Sunday. I hope you have enjoyed and hit that like button. Don't forget, please. If you are watching in another moment, not live here, please comment and let me know your opinion. How do you see the situation? But that's it, guys. The recipe, okay? Book up defensive tackle, Puna Ford edition. Keep linebackers free and let Milano alongside another athletic freak in Bernard or later on Dorian Williams eat. I think that's the simplest, putting it in a simplistic way, that's the plan, but probably more quarters, more men and more guys being able to run with opposing offense. Speed all around the AFC East. Dolphins with a lot of speed, Jets adding speed, so we need this speed, and our linebacker group clearly doesn't lack it. See you next Sunday. Have a good week, Bills Mafia. Go Bills.